All right, so we're going to be taking a look, continue looking at interpolation and extrapolation when it comes to finding values that are within or outside of a pattern, to continue that pattern. Now, we've previously looked at making an equation or trying to find a farther down value. Once an equation has been made, the result in question can be found. Okay. We could find the 100th term, the 1,000th term, or the millionth term very simply without having to extend our table. We can find all of those pieces. We call this, and as I mentioned in the previous video, we call this extrapolation. Okay, we call it extrapolation because we are looking past the set of data that we have and trying to find the next value in there. This is finding the result, which is outside a set of data. Now, interpolation, okay, is a process of finding a piece of data that is in between two known data points. Okay, sometimes our data points are really far apart. Okay, we know the 1st, and we know the 10th, and we know the 20th, and we know the 100th, or something like that. And we want to find something in between, so something a little bit smaller. Here's an example. Okay, let's say that I plant tomatoes in my garden and measure them to chart how fast they're growing. And I do this because I'm a math teacher, right? He measures the plants from the day that it was sowed based on height above the soil. So here is the week, and here is how tall the plants were at the end of that week. Week 0, so this would be right when they're planted, they were -1 centimeters above the soil. Okay, well, that tells you that they're actually below the soil, right? It's just the seed that's been put below the soil. After 2 weeks, they're 7 centimeters high, 4 weeks, 15, 6 weeks, and so on and so forth, up to 12 weeks. Now, I'm using maybe incorrect data points. I'm using these as an example. So don't go and measure all your tomato plants this summer and say, Mr. Barkman, that was very wrong. But we're just using them as an example here. Let's use interpolation to determine the height of the tomato plant on week 7. Well, you'll notice that I didn't go between 6 and 8. I only did week 6 and then week 8. I didn't do week 7 in between. So we want to interpolate what is in between. Well, to do that, we need to figure out if it's right halfway in between, we can figure out what's halfway. Or we can determine how much it grows each week instead of each 2 weeks, okay, and then build that off of number 6. Well, what we can see is that every 2 weeks, the plants grow 8 centimeters. Therefore, they must grow 4 centimeters each week. Okay? So if we can see that every 2 weeks they're growing 8 centimeters, we can understand that every week they're going to grow 4 centimeters. Well, 4 centimeters above 6 is above 23 is 27. So let's put this in here. We might need to. We actually answered the next question already. Okay. So if we interpolate halfway between 23 and 31, is 27 centimeters. Okay, and so that's going to be what our answer is for week 7. Again, how much does the plant grow each week? Well, we kind of already found that right here. And I'll move these around here. Okay, every 2 weeks the plants grow 8 centimeters. Therefore, it's got to be 4 centimeters each week because we just divide it by 2, right? Every 2 weeks. If I gave this every 6 weeks, well, we'd have to take the difference and divide it by 6. Okay, and that would be part of figuring out, again, in a linear equation or in a pattern, how much is it going each time. What would be the height of a plant after 2.5 weeks of growth? Well, what we can see is that 2.5 isn't right between 2 and 4. It's actually, well, a quarter of the way between 2 and 4. If we know that the plants grow 4 centimeters each week, that tells us that they in fact grow 2 centimeters every half week. Well, at the 2-week mark, it is 7 centimeters. Another 2 centimeters would be 9. So what we can do is we can do 7 centimeters plus 2 centimeters is equal to 9 centimeters after 2.5 weeks of growth. Okay, so we can say that because we know that the 2 here, and I'm going to put that in here in just a side note. Okay, 4 centimeters per week translates into 2 centimeters every half week. Again, we're just dividing by 2. Okay, I'm just going to put that up here. Oh, put it on the side here. Okay, so we can see that. Now, what we can do is we can also create a formula as well. Okay, depending on what our variables are going to be, we can do a formula. Can be made to solve for the inner values. Exactly the way that we did with extrapolation, we can do the same thing with interpolation. We can create a formula to solve for it, and then we can use that to interpolate. Like I mentioned here, we can also use that to extrapolate for future dates as well. Okay, so we can extrapolate for future dates as well. All right, finally, I want you to work on assignment LG.49. Okay, that'll be questions 1 through 5. Those questions are using patterns to solve. The patterns that you're going to have on your printed notes are going to all be in grayscale. If you want to see the colored versions, there are some colored versions. Those are in online here. There's some slightly colored versions that you can see as well.